Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Minds of Mortgage podcast. This is Kelly Yale, and I am thrilled today to be joined by my friend and the CEO of EPM Mortgage, Mr. Eddy Perez. How are you today, friend?
I'm doing outstanding. And yourself?
I'm doing well, I'm doing well. I feel for maybe the first time in the last 4 years, it almost feels like we're able to feel joy again. Are you feeling that a little bit?
And I try to feel joy every day.
Okay, good point.
It's what you do with yourself and all that. But no, I know what you mean by that.
Yeah. It's not been easy, I don't think, for any leader to keep their teams really, incentivized and excited and full of energy. How have you sort of done that for your team?
Culture is a very tough thing to keep in balance. It's like a tightrope, and it's been very tough the last few years because it's not even the work from home. It's just perspective is very big off. A lot of people made record money in 2 years, and they felt like that should stay the same, and that's just not the reality of the situation. While costs have gone up, so it's something that you have to really pour into. You have to really explain. You have to be very radically candid with people. And you still have to understand that 20, 30% may never buy in. And that's completely okay as long as they're doing their job and doing it well and not being toxic or negative. But that doesn't mean that they can't give feedback. I think that one of the best gifts are those that give true feedback without agenda. And those that give feedback with agenda, that's just called constant complaining, because that pursuit of excellence is a pursuit. It doesn't mean it's a pursuit of perfection. And there's no such thing as a perfect company. And if there was, it's probably Apple, and plenty of people have Android, so they can't be that perfect. And I think that that's something that people don't really, at times in this industry, understand, because, as I've said before, for 19 years and 8 or 9 refi booms later, a lot of bad behaviors, a lot of poor behaviors were promoted and compensated exceptionally well. So there's an ego and a mind cloud that's really affected everybody. Not everybody, majority.
Yeah, I came from outside of the industry back in 2012, and things were good, right? They'd obviously gotten better from 2008, and people were kind of thriving. And I'll never forget the branch manager I was working for. I was trying to lean into business development in the Charlotte area, and I was putting together sort of these lists and these events for real estate agents. And I remember him saying to me, "What's a refi boom? Nobody cares about realtors during a refi boom." And I remember thinking, like, well, how long does the boom last? Because, like, how can we just like torch our relationships when things are good for us and then come back and want relationships when they're not? And I found that to be such an interesting philosophy, right? But that, to your point, for many years, there were a lot of behaviors that were just, I don't work on Fridays, I golf on Fridays.
Rewarded. It was rewarded.
Yeah.
There's a difference. So it was really terrible, if you want me to be candid.
Yeah, I'd love for you to be nothing else. I think that it's okay to say the true things in this industry, even though
Yeah.
the line of people saying them seems very short. But I think it's important to say the real things. Speaking of the real things, I was really inspired when I read about your father's journey to America from Cuba. I would love for you to talk about. I'm sure that's a very inspirational thing to you, but I'm sure other people would love to hear that story.
Yeah, I'm first generation born in America from Cuban immigrant parents. Coincidentally, I was not born in Miami, and both my parents are Cuban, and they did not meet till Atlanta, believe it or not, where I still live today and is home for me. Yeah, my dad, he grew up probably poor middle class in Cuba, was a country boy, turned out to be very, very good at baseball. Had to quit school in 8th grade to take care of the family because my grandfather, God rest his soul, was not the best provider, always getting in trouble, fired at work for his mouth. And my dad was the middle of 5, and he took it upon himself really to step up because he didn't like seeing his 2 younger sisters and his mom suffering. And he just really took it upon himself. So he quit school in 8th grade to sell mangoes and play baseball. And then he made it all the way to the Cuban national baseball team. Unfortunately, communism came, and really took away a lot of liberties. Because what people don't understand is it's not just the Cuban Revolution of 1959, it's also the Cuban Revolution of 1933. So Cuba was first fascist, which is also a dictatorship. And they thought they would trade it in for something different because Fidel also told them that he would have elections and allow democracy, which, as we know through history, did not happen. So my dad was out with an intestinal infection, and they thought he was starting a coup because he was a popular baseball player. I don't know why they thought that because, my dad was popular, but he wasn't like on Cuban team one. He was like on the third or fourth team, which that doesn't take anything away. I mean, it's the best of the best in a very talent rich, obsessed culture with baseball. And, they sent a childhood friend to kill him because that's what they do to indoctrinate. They get the childhood friends that have been flipped to go there. Luckily, my dad was really, really sick, and his friend realized it and even told him, when my dad said, I'm sure you were sent to kill me. And he goes, I'm just glad you're a lot more sick than we thought you were. And that's when he said, if you have no country, you have no life. And even though he could have not had courage because he played on the Cuban team, they treated those athletes great. And afterwards, they're basically government employees, and any government employee was taken care of there exceptionally well, even through retirement. They had food, medicine, cars that nobody else did. Very oppressed. 99% of people were oppressed, 1% weren't. And that's the irony is everybody wants to attack the 1%ers in the world. And I'm letting you know, no matter what form of government, there's always going to be a 1%er. It's just how many people are more oppressed versus the other. So that's the irony and the hypocrisy that people don't understand. And yeah, he stole a rowboat after planning for 4 years and with 6 others rowed to freedom, landed on the Miami beaches, was homeless his first week. He always told me to be extremely kind and outlooking for the Jewish community, even though we're Catholic, because Miami was a sleepy Jewish retirement community back then. And that's who gave my dad work. That's who gave him food. Of course, my dad always jokes that he landed the day before Thanksgiving. He didn't know it, and people were just giving food away. And he's like, it wasn't that cold. I was on the Miami beaches, which it was his way of joking. However, yeah, he got to see very firsthand from day one how gracious people are. And obviously, as we know through history, the Jewish community has had their struggles exceptionally more than we did. So I can understand where they could relate and really lend that extra hand. But he got here in the mid-'60s. It's not the Miami of today. It was, like I said, the sleepy Jewish community town that, so people had to move. So a lot of people moved to either Downey, California, that's in LA, Vegas, Atlanta, New York, New Jersey, Chicago. A lot of the Atlanta people wound up going back south because it was so close. And if it got warm again, then when it got big enough, they wanted to go back because, every Cuban's got family in Miami, one way or another, uncles, cousins, somebody. And yeah, that's how he did it. He came here and, built a life from scratch, started his own business, met my mom. And as they say, the rest is history.
Do you still have both parents with you? Do you still have them?
Do what? No, my dad passed almost 18 years
sorry.
ago. No.
That's yeah. I'm going to ask you a question. It's probably only germane to you and I, but that's okay. I'm fine with this. You being in Atlanta, me being in Charlotte, right? We have seen these cities change so drastically and
Explode is probably a better way to put it.
Well,
yes.
You have. But that's sort of the thing, right? Everyone always says, Charlotte's just a little Atlanta, like we're on pace to be Atlanta. And I'm like, please, let's not do that just from a traffic perspective. How have you seen Atlanta change and grow over your time there?
So the irony is everybody always talks about Atlanta's traffic. The traffic was there when I was a kid. Because where I even sit today was considered the outskirts when I was born, even though now it's literally in the metro area, dead center. That's the irony. It was the outskirts. Now it's dead center. So what happened is Atlanta grew wide. So what happens when it grows wide and a population goes from, I remember when I was a kid, it was so proud when we hit, I want to say we hit 1.5 million. It was like a milestone, and now it has 7 million. So what happens, no matter how much roads you build, no matter how much you open, you get traffic. However, the benefit, because you always got to look at the positives and the gratitude part of it. it's a sea of trees here and the oxygen's great, even though it's a
Yeah.
big city. So I'll deal with a little bit of traffic to have more trees and more of an environment. I mean, if you looked out of my office right here, it's like a sea of trees and you wouldn't think there's a city right underneath it, but it is. So like anything else, yeah, sure. If we built it high, there'd be pollution like out the wazoo, or like when you walk around New York and it smells. Here, you don't really run into that. So everything in life is a give and take, and you just got to decide to trade what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And if traffic is really that bad, just buy somewhere close to your work or work from home, or you have those options.
Everyone can make those
You know,
choices. How is the real
yeah.
estate market in Atlanta right now?
I mean, like everywhere else, there's shortage supplies. Atlanta, I would still tell you, is more affordable than a lot of
Mhm.
places. I've seen a lot of places where I'm like, wow. And Atlanta has lower expenses and higher, income. So I would still say for its size and what you can get, it's still very affordable.
Absolutely. So I read in your background that you started in finance and accounting. How did you end up in mortgage?
Yep. I, well, I went to college. I thought I'd study accounting. And then I went into my first class, and then I kind of realized I was going to blow my brains out. It did not fit my personality or my skill sets. So I went to the counselor, and he said, "Hey, why don't you?" Because I was a sophomore at the time. It was a sophomore business class. They said, "Hey, why don't you go into finance and just look at it? It's a junior class, so you can just sit in there for a day or two that I teach." And yeah, from there, I fell in love with finance right out of the gate. And then I became a stockbroker after college. And then the crash of '01 kind of took me down. And my father had been a residential contractor. And I'd grown up around home ownership. I saw what it had done for my family. Everybody had become homeowners. I saw not only the wealth creation, but how much it made families stable, it made lives stable, and everything like that. So, ironically, it was very powerful. And somebody said, "Hey, you should try mortgages." And I did. I mean, I just, I went online, at the time, you know, my girlfriend's hairdresser had her husband just entered mortgages, and she had said, "Yeah, he talks on the phone and he gets to help people while making a great income." I'm like, "Oh, sign me up. That definitely fits me." And it was finance and it was numbers related, financial services, obviously. I just, love this industry. I'm glad I found it. There's nothing else better than it. I don't understand how fortunate I am to have found it, because it kind of finds you. You don't find it. And I wouldn't want to do anything else in the world.
When did you co-found EPM?
So I started my broker shop
Right.
20 years ago in February of 2005, and then I transformed it into a mortgage banker February of 2008. So it's 17 years old.
I mean, that's amazing. And I'll say this, and you may see something different. I am seeing so many people move to broker this year. Whereas in the past couple of years it's been talked about, and things. I've not seen as many, sort of retail loan officers going, I'm going to do this a different way. Are you seeing that on your side?
I don't know, man. I see a lot more people trying to stay the same, just holding off for the
There's
refi boom
never.
that's not
I
coming.
mean, like, I talk about this a lot, and I'm probably wrong. Look, I'm marketing and technology. What do I know at the end of the day? But I'm fascinated by where people think these refis are coming from. I'm just like, I get the anyone we closed over 8-9% coming back to us at this point and asking if this is the right time, but the refi booms of the past, to me, especially with consumer direct and servicers having, just the first option. And I feel like we're not going to see this cycle we used to see. I don't see it happening anymore.
I mean, you'll
Yeah.
have little pockets. It's what I would say. It'd be more like a dessert. It's not going to be the sugar high of the refi booms that
Right.
just kept coming and coming and coming because inflation's too high. It took quantitative easing to get rates even that low. So it's not like they were natural. It's artificial. It's like they were on steroids and now they're off steroids. And, a healthy 5 something to 6 something, even 7 is actually a very healthy market. And people don't want to hear that. However, I don't. Now, here's what people should have a lot of gratitude about. at least we have a thriving purchase market and we have such a young demographic. If we didn't, like my generation X, that's part of the reason that led to the financial crash. They kept overbuilding and there wasn't enough demand because there wasn't enough kids born in a certain time period. We don't have that challenge right now. So we should be very grateful and have a lot of gratitude that, yeah, we have some supply challenges. Yeah, we don't have refi inventory, but at least we have a lot of people that want to buy.
It's, as we're seeing, I was looking at homes in Charlotte the other day, just looking at them and seeing probably more than half doing some sort of price reduction on the house. So that was a really interesting sort of exercise for me the other day to kind of take a look at how many people are coming down, from 10, 40, $50,000, which for me means probably they were overpriced to begin with. But hopefully we're going to see a spring and a summer that's really going to put some wind back in our sails. Because I think at the end of the day, people just need a win. Some of us are driven, you and I are both driven, like, like I can be positive every morning when I wake up. I can stay on the horse. But like for a lot of people, that's a challenge. And getting a win or two, I think really puts some more energy back into this industry.
See, I always challenge that one if it's a challenge because, if you ask somebody, you know, what if I gave
Mhm.
you $1 million cash right now? How would you feel? They'd be like joyful, incredible. I said, all right, what happens if I upped it to 10 million? They'd be like, oh my God, it'd be through the roof. But what happens if I put one stipulation on the money? That you couldn't wake up tomorrow.
Yep.
Nobody would take it. Every day is a gift. I understand that there's challenges. I understand it's hard. However, I promise you, no matter what your struggles are, versus not waking up, and that's why I always have a challenge with that one because I understand you go through struggles. We've all been through them. There's tough times. There's stressful times. I'm not saying it's a party. However, you don't need to be delusional, but you need to be positive. There's a difference. Positivity, optimism gets a bad rap because some people are just straight up delusional. And there's a big difference between delusional and positive because positive people are actually probably some of the most realistic. They just understand what's possible and then what's not, and then they keep going
So one
forward.
of the challenges I you know, striking the balance between being honest and still, having a good outlook on things, right? Sometimes I feel like what I'm watching, especially on like LinkedIn, seems really sometimes plate spinning. Like we're just gonna keep all this up and everything's totally fine and don't look over here. And so sometimes I feel like there's so much false positive energy that it feels strange to me.
Juice. And
Yeah.
there's fake juice. There's for
It's
sure. Well, motivation wears off. You got to be inspired, and the only way to be inspired is to really prepare and work on yourself daily. So that's where the inspiration comes from because you get inspired because there's
right.
plenty of days you don't want to do it. I can't tell you how many times the voices in my head have told me to hit snooze and I haven't.
100%. Yes. That's just, yeah. Well, because it's just not an option. And if you give yourself the option to go down that path, then for me, as long as I'm like dialed in and doing the things, then I'm feeling better. But it's hard when your outlook is negative, or if you feel like everything's kind of against you, right? And that's so I see kind of both those sides. I see like hyper positivity that seems a little strange, and then I see people who are really looking for a glimmer of hope, and that it's an interesting time right now. But at least I feel like it's going in a very positive way, because I think the last couple of years it's been challenging for most people to see the silver lining, or to be able to wait it out, or to see their paycheck as a normal paycheck versus like like most human beings, most people in the country, they don't make six figures, much less even higher than that. And there's some normalization to that. I almost feel I don't want people not to do well. I'm sorry.
That's the hard.
Yeah.
That's what we talked about early on. That's the hardest adjustments in that perspective. And I always tell people you can't expect to be closing 5 million units and getting paid the same as when we close 14 million units as an industry. Like, guys, shut up about the volume. How many
Uh-huh.
units?
Yes, 100%. Did you have somebody who mentored you in this industry?
Yeah, I've had quite a few. Obviously, the biggest one was Dave Stevens. I was very blessed to have had a lot of his guidance and understanding because he taught me the realm of the industry, not just politically, but geopolitics, as I say, when it comes to competition, everything of that nature. He was very instrumental in my career,
That's
shaping me as a
amazing.
leader.
I would have loved somebody early on to explain the politics of it to me. I'm so blinky-eyed and positive and like carrying the little pom-poms around. It was years before I knew anything about that. And then once I found
Yeah, he taught me the game. He taught me the game, and quite a few others did. They taught me the rules to the game, and you can't get mad if you understand the rules. And here's what's going on. And I've been very blessed. Once I got on the NBA board, because I was one of the younger guys, some of the older guys definitely stepped in and really poured into me without, technically their competition, but they didn't view it that way. I neither did either. We kind of had
yeah.
a zero sum game. We were not about the zero sum game, annihilate everybody type of culture. And like I said, they really bestowed on me so much information that
Do
was
you have someone
unbelievable.
right now that you are super proud to have mentored when you look and see what they're doing in their career?
You know, I mean, I have mentored more at a distance because I've been really poured in. I would say, yeah, inside of EPM, there's, our chief production officer who came here as a post closer 15 years ago. There's a lot of people outside of the industry, sure, some that don't even work here that I've mentored that I'm proud of where they're going. I'm more proud of even no matter where they're at right
Hmm.
now, the actions that they're taking because then they're on the
Yeah,
road, and that's all that
I
matters.
agree with
They're on
that. That's you've got kids, right? Three kids. How old are your kids?
three,
Oh, so
18, 15, and
you're
11.
right at the point. Are they all big Braves fans? Oh,
Two of them are girls, so they're not as
right.
big into sports. I mean, I'm a huge Braves fan. However, I think that I think they
Hmm.
like them, but they're
Yeah.
not into baseball like I am. You know, to the same degree. A lot of them are UGA fans, that's for sure. Even though my oldest is now going to Tennessee, so she's going to change allegiances. However, you know, we're big into
Yeah.
UGA
That's
and stuff like
well,
that.
down here it is college choosing is always such an interesting thing because you just really never I mean
It means a lot down in the South. In the
my
South, it
son was
means the
looking at
world.
Duke, right? And people like Duke is a phenomenal school. Am I a Duke fan? No, I'm a Carolina fan. But if he wants to go to Duke, let him go to Duke. But people would just be a guy like, what do you mean he's going to go to Duke? And I'm like, do we always judge schools based on like our own personal feelings on the program or anything like that? Like it's just so funny to me how opinionated people are. Yeah, it's a different.
I mean,
Uh
look,
huh.
dude, it's a big freaking deal in the South. Nowhere else, really. I mean, it is. Now, I never got caught up with that as a father because my parents did a very good job of letting them know it was my life and my destiny. And look, UGA didn't have a nursing program, and my daughter wants to do nursing and then NP. However, I just told her, like, look, dude, you could be a fan of Tennessee. I'm never going to cheer for him. I'll still cheer for Georgia, but that's your life. That's not really mine. And don't be upset about it. Like, that was your number one. They're a top five nursing program in the country for public universities. So I'm very impressed, especially she got
Wow.
in through the direct admit program, which they only allowed 290 people in the whole country, but only 140 outside of Tennessee. Tennessee, the state of Tennessee, if you're from there. So she's like the elite of the elite. So I'm very proud of who she is and what she's doing. Why the hell am I going to get in the way of that? Too many parents get in the way of things that you're there to support, you're there to help them fly. Don't let it be about your ego. Like, I mean, I told her
I
we're
mean,
still going to kick their butt,
as an
but
Ohio
whatever,
State fan, I
you
can
know.
tell you that my children knew from day one that I would disown them if they ever went to Michigan. So I'm kind of with you. They could have picked any other school in the entire United States. Like, just don't pick this one state because I just could never fathom having, that kind of rivalry.
You want to laugh? The team I disdain the most
That's
is
so,
Tennessee. That's the irony behind this one. So it's like you going to Michigan, even though, because to me, I grew up in the '90s. They owned us. So it was high school and college where, you get ragged and you really, it's those formidable years. I always say, like, my son doesn't like Alabama. I never had a problem with Alabama and I respect him. But he's annoyed during that time frame of whoever owns your team, you really don't like them, even no matter how old you get, no matter how much you win. And that's Tennessee for me. So it's been very humbling, However, like I said, it's her life. I'm not going to.
yeah.
I'm here to support. I'm her dad. She's not my toy. Like, sad to say this, and I say this to anybody. You start losing your kids around 12, totally by 16. Don't believe that BS of 18. But that's what you want. Are your parents hovering over you? Like, so don't be a hypocrite about it. So, I mean, I'm very proud of her. I'm very proud that she even got, scholarships. I'm proud that she got into that program. I'm proud that she got a 33 on her ACT. Yeah, ACT. I'm proud of who she is, doing Circus Olay and a million other things. Like,
Yeah. It
I mean,
sounds
that's
like you.
effing impressive. That's my firstborn. So, the one that made you a dad. So, um, and that's the irony behind it. Cause like a lot of guys, they want a son first. No, no, I stand corrected. I think every dad should have a daughter. I really do. I understand I have two, but I also have a son. So it's not like I just have one. And look, me and my son are super tight. Um, but a daughter first, I think, really helps a
Yeah,
father get more
I see that.
focused.
Well, it also, my personal experience with it, I've noticed too that there's kind of a heart change when you have a daughter, right? Like there's a softness I think that comes out of men with when they have a daughter first. That's just something I've always kind of observed. But they could become a little softer in themselves, and I don't know that it is true or not true if they have a boy first. But I love that little wrapped around the finger type of dad big heart with a daughter.
Yeah, I mean, all three of them own me. To be fair, they all do. I'm not gonna sit here and lie about that. However, that first one you do a lot of firsts, and when it's a girl, it's like I learned to do things I never thought I would learn. However, I learned and then really enjoyed them. I really enjoyed on Wednesdays. Because I would take her to school on Wednesdays, that I would do her hair and me blow drying and doing it and doing it as best as I could as a guy, which I just knew how to do it one little style with a little bit of curve. But that was very
Right.
fond to me that I got to do those memories with her. Can't really can't really put a price tag on all those things, and you know, and then I had my son next, and that had its advantages too. I will say that I
Yeah.
feel very blessed and gratitude that I got to have both, and I got to have three kids. I think that that's just such an amazing blessing, and I'm so grateful for it.
Th-
I can't really put
My
into
kids are a little
words
older than yours. They're
my
22 and
gratitude.
19. And to your point, you lose them when they're teenagers, right? And then it sounds like you are like I am, which
Totally.
is my job is not to overparent you. My job is to support you in your decisions, whether I agree with them or not, whether I think they're safe or not. I have to let you fly, especially in your early 20s, because that's when we all screw everything up. I mean, you can only learn in life through truly living it. And one of the things that was interesting to me, my son, his 21st year, really was kind of doing his own thing, right? Really on the sidelines. Maybe I'd hear from him here and there, but he was really living kind of his life. And a couple weekends ago, we had him here. And the other side of parenting, right? They're adults and they're so excited to be with you and spend time with you as an equal, and as and having these really smart conversations and having these life experiences. to me, there's nothing that has been as rewarding as having adult children that really want to spend time with you. Absolutely.
And that's the real richness in life.
Yeah. Well, what else are you going to measure
That's
it
if you
by?
know
Because
you're
it's
rich.
certainly like if you think your bank account,
At that point, you're more like a friend, and that's what people don't realize. Like right now, the teen years are tough because you have to be an advisor, and that sucks.
mhm.
And you got to let them screw up a lot. Yeah, it's tough, but you have to be an advisor. A great advisor shares stories, puts them in positions to win. However, at the end of the day, it's like baseball. You're at the plate. You got to hit it. You can set up the whole environment, but you still got to hit it. So yeah, it's tough as a parent. I mean, I don't think any parent sits here and doesn't worry about that. It's just, to your point, if you overparent it, it's really selfish on your part, self-centered actually. You want to make them
Yes, sir.
codependent, and you really mess them up, and
I
that's
see it
horrible.
as the majority of people who I view. Yeah. And I
Today,
don't look, I
today,
everyone can do whatever they want. A lot of the way I parented my kids came from my experience in business. And I can't like it really did because things like don't come to me with a problem, come to me
yeah.
with a potential solution, right? That was instilled in them from really early on. So they wouldn't come in and be like, I can't tie my shoes. They come in and be like, okay, this is what I did with with the laces. I don't think this is what we want. Or they were always trying to think for themselves. I also never let them tattle on each other. That was a no in our house, right? So what it truly did was it drove them to having this deep relationship with one another early on, because if they didn't resolve it, they were in trouble, right? Because they didn't have another place to go with their complaints. And I always wanted that for them. Now, of course, they're like professional lawyers for one another, right? They like that's pretty much been since their teen years. Ah,
Bury the bodies, don't want to tell the parents, look out for each
yes.
other. But that's good, man. That's a very huge
It
positive. I
is,
mean, that's
unless
not
you're like
a
at
negative.
brunch with them and they're like both on the same team about everything, and you're like, wait, hold on a second, I can have like a good opinion, and they're like, shh, it's okay. And I'm like, oh man, like they always agree with each other and they always have each other's back. And if that was the only thing I did it as a parent was to give them each other and that relationship, I'm good. Yeah, it's really cool. But listen, I appreciate you talking today, not just about sort of the mortgage industry, but about some of your personal stuff, because I think a lot of times, hopefully, what we do is we show kind of the person behind what other people see. So I definitely appreciate you being on today, and I'm so hopeful. One is that in the time that I've known you, you've always showed me such kindness, and I've always respected you as a leader in this industry because you always take the time to make people feel good. So I hope that you know that, and I hope that you know that you have quite the reputation for just being a really good egg. And that's not. I
Thank you.
don't. It may seem common to you, but it's not that common. Yeah.
Well, I only compete with myself. I think that's where people mess up in life. So
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter if other people don't do it, but it matters if I do. At the end of the day, it's like when I tell people, accomplishments are for yourself, but not in a self-centered way.
Right.
It's what type of impact and how many people did you bring along with you. And the funny part is that's actually what selfish means. However, through that selfish behavior, you become selfless. I think that's where the English language is a little off. There's a difference between selfish, which is the most selfish thing you can do is work on yourself and make yourself better, because then everything you love gets better around you. Shocker. But you're not self-centered. You're not special. The world doesn't revolve around you.
Mhm.
You never know how shitty of a day somebody's having. I remember I was having a horrible day after my dad died, and one guy literally sent me an email that said, death brings you pain no one can heal, and love brings you memories no one can steal. I've been quoting that for 17, 18 years. So You never know the impact you can have on somebody. You never know, hey man, are you okay? I mean, that's just, so I live by what I call my code of life. The code of life, I call it, which it's these five in a row, and this is how it goes. It's honor, duty, discipline, sacrifice, gratitude.
Yeah.
And it's a ladder. And that's for myself. So I'm glad I get to do that to people, because they need to know that there is positiveness out there, that not everything is doom and gloom. Obviously, I'm going to be very biased because I totally don't believe that in this country, because I saw what this country and what the people in this country, like I talked about, the Jewish community taking in a lot of the Cubans in the 60s, what they did. So I've always, I don't look at the 20% negative. That's the other side of the coin. I try to find the 80% if it exists. If it doesn't, that's different. However, focus on the 80. Forget about the shenanigans, as I put it. The 20% don't even matter. Don't even lose your focus. That's just, and you don't know what somebody's going through. I tell that people all the time. What happens if they found out their mom has cancer yesterday? I always tell people in a heightened emotional state, prepare yourself for 72 hours. They can say the most horrible thing to you, but you can't take it personal. I tell that to people all the time. Do not take it personal.
Yeah, I mean, I think
If you are, you're being
if
self-centered.
you can be Teflon, if you can remain neutral in situations with people when they're having their worst day, hopefully, they have some self-reflection on that and how you stayed calm and didn't react and still treated them with kindness, because, very few people are just jerks, right? A lot of people are reacting to an enormous lot of noise they hear, and so if you can really just, yeah, 100%. My friends make fun.
More now than ever,
Yeah,
because of
100, yeah. We like
oh,
I
this.
currently live in a bubble because I refuse to like participate in media
True.
right now, because I know for me, if I start watching any like if I start really, absolutely. And people
I
don't
know I haven't
realize,
watched the
like,
news in 5
you
years.
look at how you listen to the tone of people, right? Especially people who are really into self-development or therapy or doing the work, right? We are almost always the people who eschew
Yeah.
media. And it doesn't make us ignorant. I know what's going on in the world.
It's
Yes,
not media.
it's entertainment.
No, media's not media
Yeah.
anymore. It's not news. It's entertainment. You have to understand that.
Mhm.
People get mad at Fox News or CNN. They're entertainers. And if you're not entertained, I
Yep.
mean, I remember when Walter Cronkite and all them, they lost money to do that. And then they decided they needed to make money. So it's
Right.
shock jock entertainment. It's like, Howard Stern or something like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. You just have to know, all right, what's the twist here? I mean, look, how can one channel or the other always pull one way? I mean, that sounds way too homerish. But yeah, no, I mean, I know. Here's what I always laugh is I don't need to know what's going around the news, like from world events. Somebody will be like, "Hey,
Right.
man, have you heard about this?" Like I get filled. Like people tell me the news. I don't even have to worry about. And well,
Yes.
I firmly believe that that's what's destroying so much mental health. I mean, it is
I really
horrible.
fundamentally hope that the thing I get remembered most for is encouraging people to face and truly dive into their own mental health. I tend to be a little bit of a therapy crazy person, but when I right, and it's like, do the hard work. I get it. It's
Huge fan of
scary and all
therapy.
the things, but
Nor-
Brandon.
I think it's got a bad name. I think it needs to be reframed as emotional intelligence, because that's really what it is. It's really about regulating and really understanding why. I think, and I don't think there's anything wrong with the word. I'm just saying is I think
I
that if it
mean,
did a
my
rebrand, it'd
therapist
be a
has
lot
tried to
more
kick me out
popular.
of therapy for at least 15 of the 17 years I've been seeing her, but I always remind her, like, my check-in with you is not because I have this laundry list of problems. My check-in with you is because I like to know that the way that I see things isn't twisted in some capacity, right? Because I want to present well. I want to take care of people well. And sometimes, like I just like for somebody else to help me figure out the puzzles of things. I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to do, things that are not the right thing. And when I try to explain it to people like that, right, because everyone thinks you like lay down on the couch and you're crying and you're talking about your mom the whole time. And it's like, no, 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 no. But you can go in and you can say, hey, I'm really struggling. Or I've negative thoughts, or I have all these things. And what tools can I
Yeah,
develop so that when I feel that way, I can right the ship?
I mean, I mean,
Yeah.
it's been almost 18 years, it's been 17 and a half years. I still struggle with my father's death.
Right.
Still, I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't. I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't need to talk to people about it. Like, because I bottled it up and it almost killed me. I went
That's
down a
hard. I
very
mean, I
destructive
mean,
path.
I'm sure in many ways that was your hero. And when you don't have your hero anymore, I mean, I lost my mom a year and a half ago. Thank you. But just your brain doesn't,
So,
like process that they're not here. Like there's lots of it that you do understand and the loss and all that. But my brain will still be like, oh, tell your mom. Right. Ah,
oh, because my father and I had the same birthday, and we used to race to see who could call him first. And it was only until a couple years ago that I didn't wake up to call him my birthday first. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just, and the sad reality is when my dad died, it was because people don't realize that
mhm.
the financial crash may have been '08, but the industry already started suffering late '06 when people started going bankrupt and subprime. So he died September of '07, and he died 4 days before my oldest was one. And I didn't have a choice. I was an entrepreneur at that point. Like, I had a wife, I had a daughter. Didn't matter that he died. I had to go to work on Monday. I mean, I had people counting on me. However, that was the problem. I bottled it up for about 4 or 5 years, and my God, it was an explosion. And I'm very grateful I overcame that because that was a very dark period for a few years. You know, luckily, I had my mental health. It wasn't like I was depressed or anything. Luckily, however, I basically did some bad behavior and did stuff that I'm not very proud of. And you live and you learn, like you say. There are no saints in
Mhm.
the room. That's why I always give a lot of grace. You have no idea what somebody's going through or what led them there, and it may be what they're going through today. It just may be the wound that explodes for whatever reason. That's why I always
Well,
tell people, man, I'm not
I
really
think that's
judgmental, and I
what
give a lot of
makes
second
you
chances.
a really exceptional leader in this space. So I thank you so much for your time today and for you being as open as you've been. I think that that's just people learn so much about the human beings behind sort of the face and the way that we all. A lot of the times we end up on this podcast talking a lot
Yeah,
about mental health, just because obviously I'm passionate about it, but it actually the whole thing, this whole podcast
so
started
am I.
because
I'm a huge
Ryan
proponent of
Grant
it.
of
Huge.
Neo and I were having a conversation about how if we could give one gift to the loan officers who were working with us, we would give them like a the way to be mentally healthy, to really seek it, to really want that for themselves, because it transformed both of our lives. And we were like, I wish more people had open conversations where they knew that not these people that you look up to all the time, right? Every single person struggles, and you don't have to think that they are other because hey, look, they've got it all together. Chances are very likely that they don't, and it's okay to not. That's absolutely true. All right, friend. Thanks again for your
It's
time
okay to not be
today.
okay.
We'll talk. Well, thanks
Appreciate
so
it. Thanks for
much.
this opportunity. Thank you so much. It was fun. It was very fun.